Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Rob Anderson, anesthesiologist and co-founder of Marit Health. Today's Kevin MD article is Why Can't Finding a Doctor Job Be Like Zillow? Rob, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start by briefly sharing a story, then jump right into why you decided to write this Kevin MD article.
Yeah, so I'm a practicing anesthesiologist in Richmond, Virginia. I was in leadership position with a large private equity-backed anesthesia company, and then transitioned to a night float position to kind of change up my life quite a bit. I was going through some changes, opening up myself to different opportunities, stepping away from leadership, creating more space and time for family and more space and time for business pursuits, which we'll get into. So definitely in this period of growth and really leaning in. Part of that was related to a divorce. And I think it's not uncommon for people in the medical space. Everyone knows someone that's gone through this in their career. It's not an easy time. It does allow you to focus on other aspects of your life, and it can be very transformative. And it was for me. Part of that part of that healing process for me was leaning in towards my identical twin. And so I have an identical twin who was my support through that whole process. He was there for me to listen, but also to distract. And part of that distraction was actually talking about a business plan together. And so, as identical twins, we have very different paths. And I think that's actually common for identical twins to diverge in paths
Mhm.
where it can effectively end the competition. So, I, of course, did the medical path, and he took the business path and did business and then consulting and MBA, and ultimately worked at big tech companies like Yahoo and Flickr and Glassdoor. So he was foundational to this idea of building a Glassdoor for medicine. We've talked about that for many people that outside of for people in medicine, they may not have heard of Glassdoor, but Glassdoor was really pivotal in bringing workplace salary transparency and really foundational in pushing for salary ranges being mandated on job postings. And so they changed the landscape in terms of that and bringing more transparency, which is something that obviously medicine needs a little bit more of. And then Glassdoor, it still exists, but was acquired by Indeed.com. So Indeed.com, everyone's heard of. They are the de facto job board for everyone outside of medicine. But unfortunately, it doesn't really work that well for medicine at this point in time. So this idea came about to build a salary transparency site for medicine and a modern job platform for medicine, which is something that has been sorely lacking and just kind of underrepresented in the tech space. So.
So, what's the traditional way doctors look for jobs online? I do work with a variety of traditional physician job boards. Sometimes they always say this is what the starting salary is. How is what you're doing different from what is traditionally done in physician job boards?
Yeah, so as an anesthesiologist, I actually come from a specialty that has one of the only specialty specific job boards out there. It's called Gaswork. It's very similar to Craigslist. It has a similar platform. It's very basic. It's firmly entrenched in 1995 and not very modern. But at the same time, it's functional and widely adopted and used. What we are trying to do is we've aggregated salary content. And so we have to use merit and to see salary data, you actually have to submit your own salary, right? So this is similar to what Glassdoor did. So it's kind of a give to get model so we can build a salary database that's highly powered and actionable. And so now we have 25,000 clinicians on the site that have given salaries. And so we have a deep data set with our data as well as supported by MGMA data for specialty specific verified clinicians. And so this data alongside jobs does help push employers to put job listing or put salary data alongside their site. Right now, I think there's 17 or 18 states that mandate some kind of salary range. That doesn't necessarily translate to very specific salary ranges. What we want to do is nudge everyone towards that because in actuality, when you have jobs on one tab and you have salaries on another, it's very easy to toggle back and see what the market is paying in that specialty or that region. So
So in your Kevin MD article, you compare what you're doing to Zillow, which is the real estate platform. For those who aren't familiar with Zillow, tell us a little bit about that and how are you using some of those aspects into the job board that you're talking about today?
Yeah, so Zillow, I would guess a lot of people are familiar with Zillow in terms of house hunting. In fact, Zillow is a house hunting site similar to Realtor.com. They have, housing listings. They have all the data that matters,
Yeah.
and you can search, you can scroll, you can save, you can share, you can reach out to a realtor, you can communicate, you can book a house showing. All of these things on one site. We, as our jobs platform, are really focused on making it a similar experience in terms of having all the data that matters. And so we enrich with AI, we enrich a job listing, we have facility data, we have location data, we have community data that goes deep in terms of schools and housing and even political leanings. And so we're really trying to be the one-stop shop where you can see everything just as you would be able to see on Zillow. I think the important part for us is we want to make this private, right? So we want clinicians to be able to go search privately on their own time without giving up their information. Okay, so we really focus as a clinician. This is really my driving force. We want it to be private. We want to protect your information because, as you know, if you apply to one job, sometimes your data gets out there, your phone, your email gets out there, and that creates an avalanche of other inbounds and spam texts and spam calls and snail mail stuff showing up in your mailbox. And so we want to try to change the landscape there and allow you to do this in a self-service motion.
So traditionally, physicians, like you said, would have to give up a lot of private information, cell phone number, and sign up for a site in order to get for more information about a specific job listing. But what you're doing, you're having a lot of the information just out there already without having a physician necessarily give up his private information.
Yeah, so we keep all of the information private until someone actually expresses interest or applies to a job. Obviously, there's some information transactions that have to happen to start that conversation, but it's all private. We are never going to sell clinicians' information. We're going to keep it because I personally, being in anesthesia and being a relatively high demand field, I get it every day. I mean, I get text messages and calls in the middle of seeing patients in the middle of my day, and very it's very difficult to deal with. It's frustrating. It feels like we are being hunted, and we want to change the landscape there and allow clinicians to do the hunting and the searching on their own terms and be able to shift the power dynamic a little bit.
So for physicians looking for a job, it goes far beyond salary. And you mentioned a few things, schools, cost of living, what the community's like. Just specifically, what should physicians look for when clicking on an online job listing beyond salary?
Well, obviously the workload and
Mhm.
we are working hard to capture some of this data. We have a team largely from Glassdoor. We're very fortunate to be blessed with a highly skilled team. We are leaning heavily into AI. And so we are moving forward and growing quickly. We are going to be incorporating some quality of life indices into our job postings where you can kind of measure that, right? So quality of life is important. If you are taking excessive call without pay, have very little vacation, all of these things matter in terms of staying in the game. Okay. So we've all experienced burnout to some degree. If you, we need to manage our time and manage our lives and careers and our lives outside of work to stay in the game, or else you're just going to flame out and burn out. So we want to focus on these other aspects, not just salary, right? Salary is a big component of it,
Mhm.
but we want to focus on these other aspects as well that make, the practice of medicine a little bit more rewarding and fulfilling and long term.
Have you run into any friction from the legacy job listing sites or even employers who may be hesitant to be transparent with information that typically hasn't been transparent?
Yeah, what's been interesting and honestly from being in leadership with my own anesthesia corporation, they've been very supportive. It has been interesting. I thought there would be that friction. I really did. I thought there would be a lot of pushback. But what we have come to realize is that they want to get to this salary conversation as early as possible. So they want to be dealing with the same numbers as well. They want to be this information asymmetry that exists. It does serve them to some extent, but they do want to get to this conversation early so they can negotiate fairly and have mutual understanding and move to the hiring phase. So we have seen very little pushback. In fact, we've seen a lot of interest just because these platforms, a modern platform like this, where you can have all the information about your job just doesn't exist right now. So more excitement than concern.
You mentioned one of the ways that physicians would engage your platform. They have to divulge, their own salary first, and then that's how you build up that database. How do you validate the numbers that they give you?
Yeah, so we have a pretty intense like auto moderation algorithm that works behind the scenes using AI. So we're tracking, there is ways to verify users in terms of IP addresses and all this stuff. This is all carryovers from Glassdoor and the learnings from Glassdoor. So we have the expertise to do that. And then we capture so many data points, right? So we capture 60 data points plus, and then we can work. Some data points are totally kind of disqualify a salary submission. So let's say you're self-employed, but you get 403B, contributions. It just doesn't make sense. And so those would be flagged or eliminated and rejected. And then some go through pending, and those pending queue, we actually reach out to the providers just for a little bit more explanation and go from there. So we do rely on the community. This is self-reported. And so employers have always said, well, this is self-reported data. We may not trust it, but we also have MGMA data as well, okay, on our site that we've licensed. And so we are really just providing as much data as possible, and our data is mapping pretty well with MGMA. So
What do you see as the future when it comes to physician recruitment? Of course, you mentioned AI several times during this interview. Tell us about what's coming down the pipeline in the physician recruitment space.
I think what's coming is matching based on your preferences. And so that's what we are moving towards, very similar to a dating site. Post my divorce, I was actually exploring dating sites, and that was mentioned in my article as well. They are doing matching. So you would, as our user, you'd list your preferences, right? So you'd list your schedule, your vacation, your minimum salary, you'd list all these things. And then we can behind the scenes do matching based on your preferences and your geographic region and only send you listings that are actually relevant. I think what gets frustrating about some of the job alerts and emails right now that I get is that they don't post anything that I would actually be interested in. So we want to filter through the noise and only give you something that's relevant for your life. We have seen a lot of engagement in those job alerts that get pushed out to our users because they are relevant. Me personally, living in Virginia, I would never look at a job in Las Vegas per se.
Mhm.
And I don't want to see that. It's just noise. I just want to see something in my specific region with maybe within 60 miles of my house, and then maybe some other region that I might want to live in the future. And so with our site, you can really pare it down to specific regions, multiple cities, and go from there.
That type of matching to that granular level isn't happening today when a physician talks to a recruiter and gives specific needs and requirements, and a recruiter looks for jobs to fit that physician. Some rudimentary matching isn't already happening.
I don't think it is. I mean, the recruiters are dealing with limited information,
Yeah.
and so they are constantly out there trying to buy information about really they're out there trying to buy emails and phone numbers and we've seen this a lot. People want that data from us. We have said absolutely hard no, we are not selling that data. We are here to protect clinicians, but it's out there. It's being bought and sold and traded, and that's what's creating these spam texts and these spam phone calls and these emails. And so the recruiters are really just trying to push out and push out and push out more information and just try to hope and pray. And we really want to be more fine-tuned and a little bit more focused on what the clinician wants.
We're talking to Rob Anderson, anesthesiologist and co-founder of Marit Health. Today's Kevin MD article is Why Can't Finding a Doctor Job Be Like Zillow? Rob, let's end with take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Yeah, so the take-home message is, yeah, actually, the The modern job platform is here. We've actually just built it. We have a team that's growing fast and moving fast on this. When I wrote the piece, we didn't have a modern job platform. There were some basic ones that are all legacy and rather old and antiquated, but the modern platform is here that's leveraging AI to its fullest potential and protecting clinicians' data. And that's the first priority. We want to protect their data. We want to provide them with salary data so they can negotiate from a position of strength and information and manage their career to its fullest.
Rob, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and insight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
All right. Thanks for having me.